absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's great to meet you, and I'd love to begin our conversation before we get into your work by
Mm.
asking you, right now we're in April, 4 years ago, the
Hmm.
pandemic began. We were all wrapping our heads around it. How did you survive that time period, and how did it change you?
Yeah, so my work has actually been fully remote since about 2016. So I really felt the impact of it more from a social perspective. Like everything just became online and virtual and remote. So a lot of our friends, our communities were getting used to either being furloughed, which in the UK, like loads of people were furloughed for 12 weeks, and they're kind of getting used to that or getting used to being fully remote. And I was like, oh, I don't need any time to get used to being remote, but I do need to figure out how to retain like connection to real life and not just get lost in the virtual world. So it was a really intense period that kind of felt like it didn't. There was no like respite at all, just because my husband's work, there was a lot of pastoral stuff that was going on with his church and things, just with people having a bit of an identity crisis, panicking about health, all of those things. So it really was, I would say, quite an emotionally intense transition from that perspective. And then on the introvert side of things, there was an enjoyment of not having to maybe go out and do networking and meetings and things like that that maybe had been previously a bit more expected. So I think my natural tendency is to look on the bright side of things and kind of, when you've been through a lot of difficult things in life, you can either choose to see the funny side or see the positive side and crack on with it, or you can cry about it in the bath. And I think all of us had a bit of the crying in the bath when it was all kicking off. But ultimately, the sort of intensity of that period was met, it was offset by the ability to have a bit of retreat space as well.
Yeah. So on paper, you're an award-winning AI and marketing specialist, but if I was to put you in front of a bunch of third graders at career day and one of the kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
So I actually would call myself a professional nerd to most people. I'm a professional nerd. I help computers sound more like people is how I would describe what I do currently with AI and the work that I've been doing in that. But yeah, how would I describe it to a third grader? I help businesses talk to people like they're humans
Okay.
is yeah, how I would summarize it.
So what did you want to be when you were in the third grade? What was your dream?
So I actually wanted to do something related to horses, and I had this like little goal of being a mounted police officer for a lot of years,
Okay.
mainly because I was like, it'd be really fun to be able to ride a horse for work.
Uh-huh.
But then when I was 18, I was in a horse riding accident that left me in a coma for a week, and that swiftly would have put to bed any residual goals towards that end. But I'd actually already been working in SEO for about 3 years at that point, doing freelance work via like a very early kind of version of something like Fiverr. So I was already in the marketing space by the time that horse riding accident happened. So I'd already started with the sort of backup plan, the
Yeah.
non-equine focused backup plan.
Yeah. It's amazing how quickly things can shift in our lives, you know?
Yeah,
So, so
yeah.
how did you get to this point where you're a professional nerd? You're into AI, you're into the marketing. How did all of these things kind of become who you are today?
Yeah, so I started out in SEO because I was working in our family business due to some financial things for my family and some kind of external circumstances that were outside of my parents' control. And I was working in our family kebab shop. My dad is Turkish. So I would work in the kebab shop from sort of 4 p.m. until midnight. And then I got a writing gig with this agency that was based out of Poland, and they paid me $3 per article to rewrite medical articles with keyword optimization. So I would like work in the kebab shop and then come home and I would write, anything between 30 and 100 articles a week. I was like really hustling, and that was back in 2005. And I have continued to work in the marketing space throughout that time. I spent a couple of years trying to have a proper job because my dad was like, the internet is not a real job. So I spent a couple of years working as an accountant in a book publishing firm, and was still doing freelance SEO work on the side. But then after that, really went back to marketing. And from 2016, I started to do more consultative work and to be a sort of freelance head of marketing, particularly for people who've got a large body of content. So different people who are thought leaders, authors, podcast hosts, where we're building out evergreen funnels and sales systems that really center on a framework or an area of expertise. And so that was a quite a natural transition, really, because of the content-based nature of their businesses. Like the knowledge commerce space is a great space for somebody who's worked in SEO, because you're optimizing the content, the user journey, the user experience. And so started to do a little bit more of that, was working for different agencies, doing consultative projects, building out their SEO delivery systems. How do they serve clients with SEO projects and workflows within their teams? And I started teaching for University of the Arts London as well, because when I started doing SEO, you couldn't do a degree in it. So it's one of those things you don't need a college degree necessarily to become an expert in some of these emerging technologies, because you're already like experiencing it. But in 2017, the Google algorithm started to include a lot more machine learning, and we were seeing a lot of changes in the way that keywords are used, and especially for smaller businesses, anyone who's like not got an inbuilt SEO department really, or isn't spending a huge amount of money with an agency on SEO services, really needed to start transitioning towards longer tail keywords and thinking about, voice search and a lot of these different changes in technology that were impacting how search happened. And AI is really the next, evolution of that technology. And so I've been kind of aware of it professionally, but only in about 2022 did I start to build out systems using generative AI to kind of supercharge the marketing framework that I've built over the years. My love is creative and small businesses. My dad was a small business owner. I love, people who've got a craft practice, people who are ceramicists or textile artists or, fine artists. And I really saw the potential for AI to free up the functional marketing work that needed to be done by this group of people in order for you to be able to grow those types of businesses, to make a sustainable income from your creative work, your creative practice. And there's just a really big gap really between the AI solutions that are out there at the moment and them being accessible and done in a way that respects creative work and that respects the work that goes into creative practice as well. So the AI build out really has kind of grown from this love of technology, emerging technology, being a giant marketing nerd, constantly like just love marketing, and wanting to build something out that simplifies the technology and helps people get back to doing what they want to be doing in their businesses, instead of feeling like they have to be on this constant cycle of learning how to be a professional marketer in order to be able to grow the business that they wanted to start in the first place.
So on the flip side of AI, there's this fear that people talk about. Do you have any of those fears that AI can get out of control?
Oh, 100%. I'm like a really, I always joke, like for someone who works in a space that is very tech focused, I am a very cautious adopter of things. I don't have Siri, I don't have Alexa, I don't, I wouldn't have cameras inside my house because I think there's too many stories of the way that people have hacked those things. I'm like very, very cautious about how tech is implemented. And as one of the key things at the minute with the visual generative AI is for text-based things, there's so much data available that the data that the generative AI has been trained on is really far removed from the source text that it was trained on. So when you're seeing things like duplication or plagiarism come out of AI models, it's often because it's the most predictable, sentence result. So if you put a string of text in, it's going to give you the most probable result back. But that is based on so many data parameters that the original source materials have become very, very anonymized at that point. With visual generative AI, there isn't the same level of data behind these models. So what we're seeing is people using specific artist styles and creative bodies of work to prompt these sort of visual generative AI tools. And I think that from an ethical perspective, when we think about the nature of the internet, we put things on the internet into the public domain, not necessarily understanding what that would mean for us in the future. So if we had understood how that data would have been used, would we have made the conscious decision to put our creative works out there? And the answer for many people is actually no, they wouldn't have made that decision. And I think that's where a lot of these lawsuits are coming out. But I think that there is a real concern with tools where you're capturing your voice or creating an avatar of yourself, and you're not necessarily understanding, like at the point that you're doing it, it's something novel and fun, but have you read the terms and conditions, right? Are they owning your likeness? What does it mean for companies to have your personhood as part of their database, as part of their systems? So I think there are huge ethical concerns around the use of it just for the general population. And I think that when we think about, bias and the just nature of the data that things have been trained on, there are huge issues with its application across other industries because of the way in which data tends to reinforce prejudices and things that fundamentally are going to be harmful to people, especially people who are marginalized. So I think that it's a technology that isn't going anywhere. It's a technology that is could be done much, much, much more effectively. And it's a technology that can be applied in certain sectors without there being a distinctively, harmful impact of it. But we want to be very consciously educated and aware of the fact that we don't necessarily want AI to be responsible for decision making when it comes to the judicial system and the medical system and some of these other areas. So I think as business owners, as people who have influence or who are able to use their voices, understanding how we can apply it in ways to free up our time and space when it comes to some of the repetitive, decision-making things in our businesses, like repurposing content, for instance. It allows us to have more space and capacity to address some of these bigger issues in a way that is informed. So that's kind of my approach to it.
Yeah. So who's been kind of an inspiration or a hero for you in your work?
Yeah, so I think I really am fascinated by people whose brains work maybe slightly differently than the mainstream. And this might just seem like the most, millennial woman thing to say, but I love Taylor Swift's body of work, like the way that her art practice comes out in the music that she creates, the way that she references herself, but also, historical references and references to literary giants elsewhere, and the creative way in which she engages with her audience as well. I think that the creation of this kind of alternate universe that people can really get excited about and get involved in and make connections with is really interesting to see. And I think if we're using cultural references, you asked me a question about the pandemic, right? Last year, in 2023, when we saw the Barbie movie and the Eras Tour just capture the hearts and minds of so many people, especially women, it's really the sense that people are getting back to being in immersive experiences that took them into something that was, it's a real world experience. You could go to the movie theatre, go to the cinema, you could go to a stadium, you could sing along with your friends. It's something that people really enjoyed getting stuck into. And I think that there's a huge amount of inspiration there for anyone who's doing anything to think, how can I create these immersive experiences? How can I think about what it means to be, a fully embodied person in a world that's increasingly digital, and how can we create some of those experiences that help people with a little bit of escapism and to just really disconnect from what they have been dealing with. And when we're in those spaces, it just releases such a, a huge amount of creativity and just really helps you to see things from a different perspective. So I think both of those things are recent examples of it. And more widely, I have quite a varied set of interests. My husband, I mentioned, is a church leader, and I'm a Christian. And there's a theologian called Paul Blackham who is very, again, niche interests and niche writings, but very like deeply an expert in his area. And the way that his sort of work has been built out over the years as well has and his own sort of life and work has really inspired me in a lot of ways when it comes to addressing some of the different areas of work that I've been involved in. So yeah, I think we're all made up of a lot of varying influences, and those are just a couple that come to mind right away.
Sure. So what is the inspiration or the motivation for you every day to do the work that you do? To get up, to help people, to be an entrepreneur? What is that fuel for you?
Yeah, so for me at the moment, building out marketing magic was not on my original to-do list for 2023, and it grew very, very quickly. And I was just super surprised by it. So it took a little bit of, just getting my head around just how quickly it sort of grew out. And it has been a really intense period as well because like I've been doing like 18-20 hour days, which I actively recommend against in literally all of the different ways that I talk to people. But particularly with marketing magic, the thing that has helped me to keep going and that gives me a huge amount of joy with it is the impact that people are emailing in to tell me about, right? So even just like one or two emails come to mind, but people who have had something really difficult happen in their lives and they've emailed to say, this thing has happened and I just want to say thank you because I've been able to keep my business running, which I wouldn't have been able to without marketing magic because I just haven't had the mental or emotional space to tackle the things that I need to do to grow it. There's a couple of people who were at the point of thinking that they were going to close their businesses because they just didn't have the capacity and the resource to keep going with all of the things that they felt like they needed to do, and they just felt super stuck. And they have started using marketing magic and just emailed in and said it's released so much space for them to be able to get back to doing what they really love doing instead of feeling a little bit overwhelmed by all of the all of the many to-dos there are when you run a business. So it's really the impact that it's having on people. And someone emailed me and said a couple of weeks ago that since they started using marketing magic, they've got an extra 10 hours a week with their daughter. And it just, like, those things like really make me feel quite choked up because it just is such a tangible difference for people's enjoyment of work and their ability to do what they really love to do the things that ultimately make the world a more beautiful place, because I'm working a lot with people who are service providers and creators and creatives. So those are the things that really give me a lot of joy when it comes to getting started each morning.
So of all the things that you've done in your career, what are you the proudest of?
I am the proudest of marketing magic. It has been like the hardest thing I've done by a long shot, but I do feel like it has really, it's like the pinnacle of my career. It has brought together all of the experience that I've had, all of the like the huge amount of like reading and personal development, and I mean that from a professional perspective as well, but all of the work that I've done over the years, to have like built it and for it to be having the impact that it's having is incredible. And to be able to have conversations about AI that really think about how do we use it as a tool for us to have space to be more human. So instead of being chained to our productivity, to our to-do list, to the amount of stuff that we need to churn through each day, instead for us to be able to have a half an hour conversation that turns into an hour conversation because we were having a really great like chat with somebody, like space to do those kinds of things, to be more relational, to have space for creative ideation, and to process the world and then think about how our work ties in with that. Those are things that can't be done when you put a 10 till 10:30 a.m. slot in your diary. They're things that require processing time and exposure to different influences and experiences, and for us to be able to get out of the process and instead focus on the outcome that we want to achieve in the world is something that is a real joy when it comes to using AI, and to have those conversations while also reminding ourselves that humans are far more than cognitive intelligence. Artificial intelligence can replicate the cognitive decision-making skills that we have. But as humans, we are people who have emotional intelligence, who are relational, who are embodied, and who are going to have a much wider impact than any mere to-do list
Yeah.
action item that AI can help us with.
So everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, but you run the show. What's your
Mhm.
perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I think that's also one of the things that really got deconstructed when I launched Marketing Magic, because I would always, if someone asked me like who I am, my definitions are things like, I'm a professional nerd. I am, I'm a good friend. I'm kind. I am funny. I'm really funny. And there's all of these different things that I would sort of define. But smart or intelligent has never been in like even the top 5 characteristics of myself that I would have defined. Not because I have never thought I'm smart, but I just think everyone is smart in their own way. And I think that I've just always been of the attitude that, oh, if I can do it, anyone can do it. And when I launched Marketing Magic, I was getting emails from people who are like my peers or people who have been in the marketing space for a lot longer than me. And they were emailing me being like, Menekse, I have no idea how you've done this. Like, this is just like, how is it this good? Like, how have you done this? And I just like had to kind of be faced with the fact that the perception that other people were coming to me with was very different than the perception that I maybe had of this thing that I'd done in my free time. So I think that has been a bit of a journey, and yeah, I'm still, I still err on the side of wanting to be a brain in a jar, and not being, not being comfortable with being perceived by people. But I think that the ultimate thing that I want to create is a sense of belonging and growth and joy for people. I want to be known as someone who is kind and friendly and who has time for people. And so the professional, the perception of me as a professional, I is maybe not as connected to my goals for my own life, and how, when we're on our deathbed, like, what do you want people to say about you? Yes, I've been professionally successful and I'm good at what I do, but it's not the thing that ultimately defines me. So I think when you're growing anything, when you're doing anything, you do actually have to face the fact that you are the professional version of you is a certain way, and you need to be comfortable with that in order to be able to continue to grow. And that process is uncomfortable. And I think for a lot of people, it's an uncomfortable enough process that it causes you to quit and go and get a job at McDonald's.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
So if anyone wants to get involved, hire you, learn more about you, reach out, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, like reach out to me on LinkedIn or Facebook. I'm pretty findable on social media. There are not very many Menekses out there, and there's only one Menekse Stewart that I've found, and that's me. So I'm pretty easy to find on the internet, and always love connecting with people. So yeah, it'd be great to connect.
Excellent, Menekse. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your story and time. Best of luck with
Thank you.
everything.
Thank you so much for having me. I really have enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.